make a living. Crypto is on the rise, making that dough in the crypto paradigm. Watching it go, buying low, selling high. Riding the wave, I'm here to stay, living in the digital age. No banks, no fees, just decentralized. It's crypto paradise. Ooh. No banks, no fees.
Alrighty, let's kick this thing off. Good morning from Paradise Surfers. My name's Crypto Amaru, joined as always by Nick, the Crypto Hitman, and it is Friday, March 20th. Happy Friday, ladies and gentlemen. We made it to the end of the week. We got a great show in store for you guys, a plethora of stories, charts, bullish takes, maybe a little bit of bearishness trickled in there every so often. But our headline for today, ETH going to $62,000, ladies and gentlemen. You didn't hear it from us. You heard it from Tom Lee, the man himself, the founder of BitMine, Wall Street OG. I don't know if he's a billionaire yet, but he will be soon. Future billionaire. The question in my mind is this a realistic take, Nick? Is this in our future, a $62,000 ETH coming to us this cycle? Or maybe it'll be next cycle, maybe it'll be in 2 cycles from now. We'll have to see. So we will talk about that prediction. Love to see the bull posts out there. The market's looking pretty decent. I don't know if there's been some Iran war news that have sort of gotten people to step back and realize World War III is not coming, so they're getting risk on again. I don't know, but maybe we'll start with charts. How are we looking on the day here?
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin's still holding above $70,000, sitting right on that 300 moving average, as the yellow one's still slowly ticking up. Again, we wanted to see this rounded bottom. We talked about it starting here. Rounded bottom, and we want it to go up and explode through the red line from below. It's slowing down with this dip. We'll see. We have more red today in Bitcoin, in Ethereum, and in the stock markets, but higher lows versus the low of yesterday. We saw oil overnight go down to as low as $93, but it has bounced back up to $96. So I think you're spot on with... There's some kind of global macro stuff going on. I don't know what I missed overnight. What did Trump tweet? What did the Japanese prime minister tweet? What did Iran tweet? What did Israel do? I don't know. But we saw a nice relief rally. We topped out at like 3 a.m. my time. And ever since then, we have been slowly grinding a little bit lower here across all assets. Coinbase still holding over 200 at 201. Ethereum 2140, looking a lot better than the Bitcoin chart, sitting higher than the moving average and the 200 moving average. Much better rounded bottom. So as we predicted, Ethereum continues to look better than Bitcoin. We would like for it to have some major outperformance, and we'll talk about that in this show because, well, Thomas Lee thinks the outperformance is coming as well. And then we got NASDAQ is down 0.5% today. It was down big yesterday, caught itself by market close, but is towards the low once again. Let's see what happens with these markets. Again, we had this massive high-level consolidation, and then the Iranian war happened. And it hasn't been catastrophic to the price, but it's just created this slow grind, this beautiful bullish chart ruined right on the day that the Iran started as far as consolidating and trending a little bit lower.
Yeah, I'm not worried about S&P 500, NASDAQ. They will bounce, and they will run back to all-time highs once the Iran war is done. You guys know... We're Crypto Paradise. We love rounded bottoms here. Only round bottoms here at Crypto Paradise. No flat bottoms, only round. So great to see the Bitcoin chart looking constructive. ETH is looking good. Only a 30x to Tom Lee's $62,000 price prediction. So surely we'll get there. I don't know when, and I don't know how many of you will still be standing here in the crypto space by then. But 62,000 ETH, it's coming. Is the money supply going to help get us there, or is this correlation completely broken? Because it ain't holding up recently. We're looking at the money supply to crypto price.
Well, that was the expectations earlier this cycle. That's what even the 4-year cyclists were talking about as the M2 money supply. It was expanding. It's time for Bitcoin and Ethereum to go, and never really happened. Bitcoin and Ethereum lagged the M2 money supply the entire time. That liquidity pretty much is sitting in money markets, over $8 trillion sitting in money markets, and probably flowed into the gold rally, into the silver rally, into other rallies that have occurred, the stock market rally, but the M2 money supply so far has never impacted Bitcoin or Ethereum in the cycle. Now, that's where we get the 5-year thesis about ISM. It never was about the money supply. It's always about the ISM, dummy. That's what What's-His-Face always says. And, it continues to look like that because the M2 money supply just went to a new high, and Bitcoin and Ethereum, last I checked, are definitely not at new highs.
Yeah, but isn't there a chance that this is just a lagging indicator? Isn't there a pretty good chance that because interest rates are still relatively high, a lot of investors are keeping their money parked in the money market? They're parked in less risky assets because they can earn a decent yield because of that. I mean, you look at the long-term interest rates are something like 4.5%. Forget the Fed's overnight lending rate. The long-term rate is what you need to look at. And you can still get like 4% in the money market, which obviously to us crypto degens is not exciting. But for, mom and pop out there, your grandpa, pension funds, all the big money, they're happy to have some of their money allocated to money markets and lower risk investment bonds, etc., which is driven by these high rates. So, I don't think the money supply correlation is completely broken. I just think it's delayed. I just think we haven't had the environment from an interest rate standpoint to coerce investors to move back into risk assets. Not in the way that we want to see it anyway. So look, don't despair. It's going to money will eventually flow into Bitcoin, ETH, etc., altcoins. It just hasn't happened yet. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, well, and maybe the M2 money supply is getting the rich people richer, and they're actually dumping into Bitcoin, but all the peasants, we're having to slowly sell our Bitcoin to keep living while we wait for this bull market to happen. Now, Bitcoin whale wallets holding 100 plus Bitcoin have grown by 753. That's a 3.9% increase in the past 3 months, even as prices have dropped 20.2% per sentiment. So, I mean, that's pretty crazy. Whale wallets are increasing, even though we've been seeing the 6-month downtrend in Bitcoin. Just in the past 3 months, 4% increase in whale wallets. So it's not the whales with 100 Bitcoin or more selling. It's actually the whales buying.
Yeah, I liked this story because it flies in the face of the popular narrative that, all the whales are selling and the Bitcoin OGs are getting out and they know what's coming and it's going to be a big crash and the 4-year cycle's real and all that. And to be fair, there have been OG Bitcoiners that have sold, but I think a lot of them have sold above 100K. And seemingly many of them are looking to buy back in here, right? So, again, you kind of want to follow the smart money. You want to follow the whales. They control the price more than us peasants, as Nick liked to call us. So the fact that they're buying here and their cohort is actually growing is a very bullish take, and I don't think enough people are talking about it. So we're highlighting here on the show as if we needed another reason to be bullish about Bitcoin.
We got AJ West in the building saying good morning. We got Wyckoff Stock Market Institute saying let's go. Smash the like, share, and subscribe buttons. And Luli Lullaby 8, Miko Chapo. Good morning, guys. Good to see you guys in here. Even though it is technically a red day once again, people aren't interested. They don't care about crypto. They're not tuning into their investment portfolios. They can't bear to see those low numbers. You guys are still tuning in, staying in the loop and preparing for what is next to come, and hopefully that is some green candles. Now, obviously, Bitcoin whales are buying, but Thomas Lee was on stage, and he said some pretty crazy stuff. Tom Lee just said Bitcoin is still going to 250,000, and if Bitcoin hits 250,000, then Ethereum is going to $62,000. Now, since the low of the Ethereum to Bitcoin chart, we've been predicting that Ethereum would outperform Bitcoin. It did by as much as almost a double up, still outperforming by around 50%, and this would be a massive outperformance. Obviously, if Bitcoin goes to 250,000, people are going to be massively excited. That is a 4x, a little over 4x from here. But Ethereum to 62,000 from today's $2,000 is something like a 30x. Massive outperformance for Ethereum. That would be massive outperformance for altcoins. And we would be talking about which altcoin chain is outperforming as well. Would it be BNB following suit of Ethereum? Would it be a newcomer like Pulse Chain? Or would it be an OG that's been underrated like an AVAX or something? Or maybe Cardano finally figures it out. I don't know. $62,000 Ethereum would be a hell of an alt season.
When ETH hits $62,000, I think we can start doing these streams from Tulum, Mexico, in a giant mansion. What do you say? Can finally get out of the shitty U.S. First of all, I do think this is going to happen. Second of all, I don't know if it's going to happen in this cycle. Third of all, you should all watch the clip, because in the clip he lays out the reasons for why they believe this to be the case. they've hired a renowned market timer, a Wall Street legend by the name of Tom DeMark, who basically laid out this thesis. And he says, if you look at the price performance of Ethereum over the past 6 months, since October, for example, and you compare it to the stock market crash of 1987 and the stock market crash, I believe, of 2008, there are striking similarities, like a 93% correlation in the charts. Okay. And then if you look that and you extrapolate and you look at and the price performance of S&P following those crashes, that leads to, and you assume that ETH is going to follow a similar path, that leads to this insane outperformance that you get, and you reach that $62,000 mark, which, by the way, is their bull case. He's very clear to specify that's their bull case. Their base case, I think, is in the 20,000s.
Yeah, my prediction for a while for the cycle top, for a 5-year cycle top of Ethereum was $244,000 Bitcoin and $22,000 ETH. So we'll see. Will
That's
the Bears
kept that 1 to 10 ratio?
Yep.
Which he mentions. He's like, if it does that, then we're gonna hit if it keeps the historical ratio, it's gonna hit the 20,000 or so mark. But if it becomes like the payment rails, and if it becomes the agentic AI ecosystem, and if it fulfills all the promises that we believe it can fulfill, then 62,000 is in the cards. To me, highly unlikely. I think we hit $62,000 this cycle for ETH. That would be insane. But he did also point out, by the way, that ETH is actually the best performing asset in the past 10 or 15 years. It beats Bitcoin. It beats NVIDIA. Nothing beats Ethereum in terms of price performance. Remember, it started at 30 cents, I think, is what it launched at. So just bear that in mind. Do I hit it at 62K? Probably not this cycle, but why not in 10 years from now?
Yeah, but even outside of the 10 years, we've had this 5-year consolidation. It would be nice if Ethereum even reattained the 10-to-1 ratio. Keep that in mind. If you would achieve that goal right now, Ethereum would be $7,000, breaking out of a 5-year consolidation with Bitcoin price down here in the shitter at 70. So a lot of upside potential for Ethereum. Again, the prediction for the 5-year cycle top, which is still in place, 244K Bitcoin, 22K Ethereum. And we'll see. Will the Bears be right when we go to 40,000 before we get to the heady highs of this cycle, potential 5-year cycle of 244,000 Bitcoin? I don't know. We're running out of time. It is now March 20th of 2026. You only got about 10 months left to make something happen here. So let's go, market makers. Let's go, macros. Let's go, Trump. Let's end the Iranian war. Let's get the interest rates cut down, and let's get risk on assets some liquidity they deserve.
You know what's interesting about Ethereum compared to Bitcoin? You do not hear nearly as much talk about early Ethereum guys who made $1 bajillion. There are a lot of those people. And, are they selling and we're tracking their wallets, and ETH just sold 100 million? Why is that? Why are we only tracking the Bitcoin OGs but not the Ethereum? Because I actually think that's the main reason why Ethereum sort of underperformed. There are thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people out there who have made life-changing gains on Ethereum, buying it at a couple bucks. No different than the Bitcoin OGs, right? And I think they've been selling. But no one's talking about that. Why is no one talking about that? I wonder. Maybe we can start tracking that here at Crypto Paradise. Give the market some more knowledge.
Yeah, I don't know. Also, the Ethereum people, the people who are early to ETH, probably dabbled more heavily in altcoins than Bitcoin people. And when bear market comes, alts go to shit, they're probably more likely to have to sell some of that ETH to keep their livelihood going. So I don't know. It would be interesting to track some of those whale wallets. We do know that the Foundation has been a major seller, that Vitalik has been a major seller over the years. And seemingly right now, when these Ethereum companies have turned back on the buying, Vitalik and the Foundation want to do the selling. So I don't know. I wish they would stop selling. They don't need so much money. Or at least just stake it and sell the Ethereum that's earned. But who knows? So how do we get these heady highs of Ethereum? Well, one good thing is the BlackRock's new ETHB has now reached 254 million in AUM within a week, including 146 million in fresh investor inflows. This was all the rage talking about a passive income producing Ethereum spot ETF. But since it is launched, nobody's really talking about it besides us. And what do you know? Within a week, 254 million in AUM. Incentives for the first 2.5 billion AUM that's going to go into this fund. And I expect this to grow rapidly if we can get some sustainable green candles in ETH price itself.
This is incredibly impressive, especially given the macro outlook right now and what's going on, global turmoil, Iran war, etc. Oil prices highly volatile. This is not really an environment you would expect investors to be really risk on, investing into new exotic instruments like ETF, ETHB. So the fact that it can get 254 million in a week during the Iran war, during oil shock, during global chaos, incredibly impressive. What happens when the war ends, oil goes back down to reasonable prices, and we stop having to worry about whatever crazy thing Trump is doing on the global stage for a couple weeks? I think we could easily hit the first billion a couple weeks thereafter. So very, very impressive, very promising. And I just want everyone to remember this too. For all those impatient ETH investors, ETH is relatively young compared to Bitcoin. It launched in, I believe, 2016. Right? Bitcoin was in 2009. So Bitcoin has a 7-year head start on Ethereum. Just think about that for a sec. And then just understand how impressive the performance has been and still how much upside there is to go. So, yeah, don't sell your ETH bag, guys.
Yeah, and here's another thing. Ethereum continues to dominate the stablecoin inflows with 2.2 billion in the last 24 hours. Ethereum will win. This is another thing. So you have institutions that are liking Ethereum. It's the second largest crypto asset in the world. So if Bitcoin goes up, Ethereum is going to catch a bid. But you got the stablecoins who are focusing primarily on Ethereum adoption. And then who else? BNB chain is also up there as well. Two chains that we like a lot. I mean, you got all these bullish macros, but Ethereum price isn't going yet. What is going on here? I know stablecoins don't directly affect Ethereum buys, but normally it does add to utilization, which creates fees, which increases burns and passive income, and also adds liquidity to the network as well. Why is Ethereum price still lagging, even though you got these institutions adopting and you got stablecoins pouring in to Ethereum? But it looks like, I guess, these stablecoins just aren't buying Ethereum itself.
I mean, this is just one minor catalyst, really. I guess it does help with the transaction fees, the adoption, so on, the narrative around Ethereum. But look, these things are, the price is affected by liquidity flows, by investor sentiment, by interest rate, by Fed policy, by global macro settings, and also by the price of Bitcoin, too. Don't forget that. I mean, Bitcoin's 50% down off its highs, so why would you expect Ethereum to be, at $4,000 if Bitcoin's at 70, So I'm not extremely worried about it by any means. The way I look at it is we're on a 5-year consolidation for ETH, which is crazy to think. I mean, that's insanely long time. But the longer the consolidation, if you're talking about a blue chip, strong fundamental asset, the bigger the breakout. So you'd expect, I mean, I don't know, man. $10,000 ETH, $12,000 ETH. By the way, that's my kind of base. My base case for this cycle is $12,000 ETH. I'm not even going into the 20s like some people, let alone the 62,000. But $12,000 ETH will feel pretty damn good. That means alt season will be in full effect. There'll be 100x opportunities in the trenches all over the place. We just haven't had that right alchemy of interest rates and so call it QE and ISM expansion and money supply. It hasn't all come together like it came together back in 2021, but I believe it's going to happen soon.
Talking about Ethereum and all the bullish things for Ethereum and the expectations of Ethereum to continue to outperform Bitcoin, is alt season number 3 finally here? The last 2 seasons started on March 30th, 10 days from now. Also by March 30th, we would love to get the SAVE Act passed, the Clarity Act passed, and those refund checks starting to hit the bank accounts of taxpayers here in America. It seems that the start of the next season needs 356 additional days before BTC capitulation begins on March 30th. Calculation here, season 1, season 2. We're not all about numbers, obviously. But do you believe that we are on the cusp of an alt season? Do you think that an alt season can really start after we've had such a large sell-off in Bitcoin and Ethereum? So even if Ethereum starts outperforming off these lows, but is at $3,000 or $4,000, sub its all-time highs. Same thing for Bitcoin. Maybe it's at 85 or 90,000, but still sub its all-time highs. Do you think it's possible for the Bitcoin dominance to really start falling off and alt seasons to start popping up?
It's a great point. Normally, for alt season to start, you'd expect first Bitcoin to outperform for a while. And we haven't yet seen that. But one thing that does sort of lend credence to this prediction is my guess is the Iran war will be done by March 30th. And do we see some major green candles across all risk assets when that happens? Probably. So, yeah, this could happen. This could play out similarly. You mentioned the Clarity Act as well, which is apparently quite close to passing. I guess the banks and the crypto companies have come to a compromise. That's what I'm reading. 99% chance it gets passed relatively soon, according to some analysts I follow. So does that help spur on any potential alt season? But yeah, I think to get a truly sustained alt season that's going to last 6-12 months, you really need major Bitcoin outperformance to start. You need ETH to do a major run, and then money will start trickling into alts. So that's what I expect to happen. And Bitcoin, I don't know, man. My guess is we start to we continue this slow grind up, rather than, I'm seeing people suggest that we're gonna hit all-time highs on Bitcoin, $200,000 Bitcoin by June, because they look at the fear, they look at like the emotional charts, that tracks the emotions and stuff, and they say, okay, we're going to be at 200,000 Bitcoin by June. I don't see that happening. I see much more likely we're slow grinding up, and maybe we're at $100,000 by June, and maybe 130 by September, and then maybe we get 150, 160, 170 by the end of the year. That to me is probably more likely. But bottom line, whether alt season is in a week or in a month, if you're watching the show, just keep hanging in there. I think it's sooner rather than later.
Well, it's interesting. Why is there no alt season? Why is liquidity so thin in crypto markets? Why is Bitcoin the price it is? Here we go on Hyperliquid, a crypto native platform for trading. Commodities have overtaken crypto on Hyperliquid, with oil, gold, and silver all being the leading volumes, more so than Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any other altcoin. So a crypto native platform utilized for trading now has the highest volumes of trading happening with commodities, oil, gold, and silver, where, what global macros are happening in the traditional markets are now directly impacting and getting all the trading volume from crypto native individuals. Pretty interesting.
Well, I don't know if it's just crypto native individuals. I think a lot of traditional investors have moved over to Hyperliquid to speculate and trade on these commodities. I look at this as sort of a bullish thing. We found now another product market fit, genuine use case for blockchain technology. And you could say, well, Crypto Amaru, it just facilitates more speculation and rampant gambling. Well, yes, that's what the crypto industry is here for, guys. I don't view it as bad at all. I see real-world adoption. I see normies moving on to blockchain. I see tokenized real-world assets. I see now adoption on the Hyperliquid product, which, by the way, the Hyperliquid token is now in the top 10 of all crypto assets, dethroning Cardano, which makes a lot of damn sense to me. So I don't know. I think this is all good. The question in my mind is, why is it that investors are shying away from gambling on price go up and down on Bitcoin, etc.? Is it because it's too damn manipulated and everyone got washed out and wrecked? So people are like, I got to go to these. Not to say silver and gold are not manipulated, but is Bitcoin overly manipulated that it scared away all the leverage traders? Maybe.
Gold down to $4,601, and it had an absolute catastrophic dump yesterday. Recaught itself overnight and is down set today. I know that the Nasdaq looks like it's down 1.19%, so something's happening. New low for the move for the stock market here. And Ethereum trying to hold in above $2,100. Bitcoin trying to hold in right above 70,000. It's at 69,800, so giving up that $70,000 mark. So not good on the markets today. And here's this. Sam Bankman-Fried's bankrupt exchange FTX set to repay creditors $2.2 billion this month. The question for me, and there is no attached article to this, is what is the $2.2 billion being paid in? Is it being paid in Bitcoin or Ethereum, or is it being paid like the previous distributions in stablecoins to crypto native people? If it's being paid in stablecoins like the last payouts, then that is bullish, because that's $2.2 billion going into the hands of crypto native individuals that may or may not buy more Bitcoin, Ethereum, or altcoins. Now, if it's being paid in Bitcoin and ETH, in times of turmoil. These people have been lost on the cash forever. Well, obviously that's bearish. Not saying everybody will sell down here at this prices, but any amount of sells is no good sells.
No, it's getting paid in USDT as it was the prior times. And I believe they've actually tracked what those recipients do after getting that payment. How many people port back into crypto? And I think it was like 20 to 30% when they looked at prior disbursements, right? And so even 20 to 30% back in the market, maybe a little higher this time because things are feeling kind of bullish again, in my estimation. That's a not insignificant amount of buy pressure coming into crypto. So I'm bullish about this. I'm happy about this. The other thing I want to flag, it's kind of funny. It's kind of sad. Apparently, Sam Bankman-Fried was like the most prolific venture capital investor ever if he hadn't gone to jail. Because if you looked at like his past 10 venture investments, he put in like 50 million into the Anthropic seed round worth like 5 billion. He did like 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 of these venture investments into equity plays, into like these AI companies before a lot of other people, and he would have generated like 30 or 40 billion if he hadn't gone to jail. But obviously, he used investors' funds and he deserves to be in prison. And you can be a good investor and also a piece of shit. But I just thought it was kind of funny reading that information. Sucks for him, I guguess.
It's crazy. Just too many IOUs on the centralized exchange, manipulating, getting too greedy. If he would have done less manipulation, less, rehypothecation, and less IOUs, they probably would still exist today. And maybe Bitcoin and Ethereum price would be higher right now because of that. You wouldn't have that black swan event. But and he would have been billions and billions of dollars. A crypto native who wants to keep hoarding money into crypto would have had billions of dollars from traditional AI markets to now be buying dips here in the crypto market. So the things that could have been a hero like CZ instead becomes a zero and is in prison. Hopefully he does not get the pardon because he did much worse things than we saw from CZ.
No, he's not getting the pardon. Trump already said no, which I'm happy about. But it's funny too. A lot of the investment money, I believe, came from FTX users. So I'm pretty sure he was just stealing the money that they had deposited on his exchange and then moving that over to his venture firm and then using that money to invest. So, you can call that prolific investing, or you can just call it a piece of shit who stole your money and then invested in venture plays. That, to me, is probably the more accurate description. But in any event, the creditors getting their $2.2 billion back. Let's see how much money then flows into crypto as a result if we get any green candles.
Yeah, we'll see what's going on in the rest of the market. The markets are red across the board. Oil flat on the day at $95.70. Was as low as $93. So I don't know what's going on here to cause the red weakness. We got Pruvex still above $127 million market cap. Sold off with the market last night. Is seeing a rally today. The Pulse Chain blue chips all plus or minus 1%. So you got Hex up a percentage, Inc up a percentage, PLS and PLSX down a percentage, and you have no real altcoins showing any life today. You do have several altcoins that are just flat. So 0% up or minus, plus or minus half a percentage point, while Nasdaq is red, Ethereum is red, and Bitcoin is red. So I don't know. Maybe alt season 3.0 in 10 days is a reality.
Well, it surely ain't happening today unless Trump and Netanyahu come out and say the war's over. That's why we actually got some green last night. Because Netanyahu did a press conference. By the way, Netanyahu was alive. Did you see this whole conspiracy that he was dead and he'd been killed and then there was, his ears and something? I don't know what they were looking at. But anyway, he came out, proof of life. Hopefully the people who bet that on Polymarket lost their money, because that would be a shame if that bet was still open. They should close it out if the platform, has the ability to do that. But in any event, Netanyahu's alive. He came out and said, essentially, that they could declare victory, but that they're going to keep going or something along those lines. And then Trump kind of came out and said the same thing, I think. So, I don't know. I'm wondering, is Trump starting to feel pressure because of the oil situation and energy
oil price, stock market prices, crypto prices, midterms are coming. It's like you were doing all these things that were being massive beneficial. You were deporting, cutting down on fraud, stock market price up, gas prices down, the illegal situation was under control here on the mainland, and then we get involved with stuff overseas, and all of the things that he was running on and was doing properly is now kind of backfiring. Now, granted, Stocks are still higher today than they were when he took office. Bitcoin is still 70,000, which is okay. Deportation is still going on, but it's not a main focus anymore. And fraud is still being caught-ish, but now all the fraud you caught, you're spending all those funds on a foreign war, which half of us didn't want. So, a lot of his calling cards are kind of in limbo right now, and maybe that's why he's feeling the pressure. And really, 99% of that is solved if this war ends. You declare victory, you push them back another 5 years, 10 years, or whatever it is with nuclear war, and you're going to see markets rip and roar. You're going to get back focused on deportations, and you're going to have Nick Shirley finding fraud in California, and the federal government can save and cut down its deficit, hopefully. It really comes down to that, and we'll see how it all plays out here, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, we're 21 days into the war. Really not that long, if you think about it. I know it's been... I guess with social media and the fact that all information is so accessible now, like it wasn't like this back in like the Iraq War. I'm sure many of you viewers are too young to remember that, but it wasn't in your face to the same level, at least as I can recall. Maybe because I was like 14 years old, I wasn't paying attention. But this feels a little different, so maybe 21 days feels longer than it really is. But 21 days is not a long time, and especially not for having destroyed 90% of Iran's military capability and destroying and killing all their leadership. So, I mean, it's a resounding success from that standpoint. I think it does get ended in the next week. I really do. The big question mark, I guess, is what happens to Strait of Hormuz afterwards. Because what would really be a shame is we do all this, you talk about the $10 billion that's been spent, a lot of goodwill has been spent as well, because there's certain people that haven't liked this, for whatever reason or another. If then Iran regime is still intact and they can continue to just arbitrarily close the Strait of Hormuz and essentially control the global oil supply, 20% of it anyway, that doesn't seem like a good outcome. So, I don't have all the answers, obviously. A part of me is like, all right, end it tomorrow so my bags can pump. And then part of me is like, well, finish the job so that my bags can pump sustainably over the next multiple years and we don't have to worry about a crazy theocratic, Ayatollah Islamist regime controlling the global oil markets. So I'm a bit torn on it. But bottom line is I do think it ends within 10 days or so. I think the markets, by the way, are selling off because Trump has gone out and said, basically, we may take Karg Island with boots on the ground. And the markets do not like this because does this prolong things? And is it a quagmire? And is this Iraq 2.0? And blah, blah, blah. Let's hope they can resolve it quick and just end the war and at the same time manage to make it such that the Iranians can't control the Strait of Hormuz. That would really be the best of all worlds.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, that island essentially is where 90% of the refinery occurs for the Strait of Hormuz for Iran. That's kind of where their massive oil stock supply is, where a lot of the refinery happens, where a lot of the shipments out through the strait occur. So that's why it's such a big deal as well. Whoever controls that island is now controlling 80% of Iran's oil, not just the oil that's going through the strait itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because what Iran is doing, they're cutting off their oil supply, which obviously hurts everybody else, but also hurts them. I mean, it's also not good for their own income. So how long can this be sustained for? I don't know, man. This is wild stuff, but you would just hope that there is a plan for an off-ramp, that there is a clear objective, like once we hit this objective, and it's an achievable objective, not something crazy. By the way, I think regime change is off the board. I don't think that they're saying we have to get regime change and we won't stop bombing until that happens. I think the objective has always been military dominance so that they can't threaten us with missiles and nukes, etc., within the next 5 or 10 years. So hopefully that objective is basically here and it's arrived. And we can declare victory, and then let's move on to the next thing. I don't know, Cuba? Let's move on to Cuba. That feels a little bit less fraught with global risk and risk to the markets. If you want to take over Cuba, Trump, you got my permission. Let's end the war. I'm ready for my bags to pump.
Yeah, no shit. Well, hopefully there's a break between Iran and Cuba, because you're going to have all the leftists out there protesting for Cuba. Cuba rights, Cuba this, even though, Cuba right now is suffering a lot. Cuba is kind of a proxy of the United States, but suffering with lack of Wi-Fi, power outages. The leadership there has kind of drained that island of all of its resources and money for their own personal gain and kind of left the citizens holding the bag.
Bro, Trump could cure cancer tomorrow, and the leftists would be rooting for cancer, right? They'd be down with Trump. I can't believe he cured cancer. Like, the leftists are out of their mind. Their only policy is everything Trump does, we hate. Trump is doing arguably great things for the country and most of the citizens. I'm very happy. I mean, this fraud stuff, dude. This fraud stuff is so much worse than anyone realized or thought before. It's actually mind-boggling. If you guys are worried about $10 billion spent preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, why are you not upset about apparently it's something like $300 billion lost to fraud in California?
Yeah, I mean, there's $9 billion found in 2 months in Minnesota alone. Much rather what it hasn't been found because it hasn't been looked at that hard yet. So it's only been a couple months. $9 billion. So essentially that paid for the Iranian war. But the thing is, like, that $9 billion is poof gone. A large percentage of that has been tracked, obviously, to Somalians and non-citizens, but also being sent back overseas and funding terrorist organizations. So not only is the money gone in the hands of non-citizens or Somalians who don't really assimilate to the culture of America out of your tax dollars, a large portion of that, 1 point something billion, 2 billion of it, left the country economy altogether and got spent by terrorists overseas who don't like you. It makes sense.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to pay taxes this April, so my taxes can fund more overseas terrorists and complete moochers off the government. My goodness, like, setting aside, because I don't think there's that much money with overseas terrorists, but what I do think is happening is there's an entire class of either citizens or non-citizens, basically foreigners. Absolutely, they do not assimilate. These are not American people. These are not Americans. They happen to live here, but they do not identify as an American. They do not believe in what Americans believe in. They would, as soon as they possibly could, stab an American in the back, figuratively or literally, if it could benefit their home country. That's who we're dealing with. And yet these people are being funneled so much money. They do not pay for health care. See how much money hardworking Americans pay for health care every month? It's mind-boggling. Not only that, I don't think they pay anything in federal taxes. They don't make income. And they're just getting free money from the government through all these various random bullshit services. And that's the ones that are not scamming us actively by setting up phony daycares and phony hospice centers. This should be infuriating. This should be so much more infuriating than the Iran war to every single American. I don't care if you're left, right,
Immigrant,
center,
not immigrant. Yeah,
anyone who's a hardworking American, this should infuriate you more than anything else. So yeah, let's get Trump back focused on the domestic stuff. I get why he felt he had to go and, take out Iran when they were weak, the regime when it was weak. Okay, sure, fine. But at some point, it's got to end. We're 21 days into it. What do you give it, another 10 days max?
They said 4 weeks was the goal. So, I mean, that's 4 weeks. You do the math. 28 to 31 days is really what the goal was, 1 month. So, we'll see how that does. That means they got somewhere between another 7 days to 9 days from now, maybe 10 days to make something happen.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like they were continuing to bomb and take out various targets and, destroying their nuclear capabilities and so on, which I am in favor of doing that. Like, if you start this war, cause all this disruption, global oil markets spike, everyone's worried about recession or whatever, inflation and all these things we're panicking over. Well, last thing we want is to have to do it again in a year. Right. So you might as well just get it done. Like, just get it done. Here's the one thing the market's not pricing in as a potential. And that is that this actually all works out great. And that there is some kind of regime change. Or they just, lose control of the Strait of Hormuz. Energy prices drop massively. That threat in the Middle East is basically gone. And we have a glorious bull market for the rest of the year. It feels like no one is really, maybe other than the people buying Bitcoin and ETH right now, Feels like, for the most part, everyone is just pricing in and assuming doom and gloom. That's not good.
Yeah, and before we head out, let's see if polymarket Fed changes have happened at all. Obviously, we know they didn't cut rates. Well, what do you know? The worst result possible. Trending in the wrong direction. Look at these numbers. The April 28th, the last Fed meeting that Powell will be running himself. There's now a 95% chance of no change, a 3% chance that Powell on the way out the doors gives a big middle finger and raises interest rates 25 basis points, and only a 1% chance of a cut. These are the lowest numbers for those who believe that a cut is coming and lower interest rates is coming to the American citizens and the U.S. dollar holders around the world. Well, what do you know? Look at this. That is wild. People think Powell is going to have that middle finger up on his way out the door April 28th and potentially even raise the interest rates.
I don't think they get a raise. In fact, we had Christopher Waller, who's a pretty influential Fed governor, say that he was ready to vote to cut rates, but for the war, oil prices going up, and then what's the inflationary effect of that? So
I'm so sick of hearing about inflationary effect. Jesus Christ, look at the fucking data. By the time you actually react, we will have 3% inflation because you sat and watched 1% and 2% for a year.
Yeah, so the polymarket bettors, I think I said this yesterday, are too caught in the moment. They're assuming this war is going to last another month, right? And oil prices stay elevated for that long. My assumption is the war ends in a week, 10 days, and oil prices crash. And all the fear mongering about oil, blah, 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 that recedes into the distance very quickly. And so if that happens, I don't know if we get a cut, because it seems like this current, group of Fed governors led by Powell is not interested in cuts. I don't know if we get a cut, but certainly not a raise. And then, it's up to Kevin Warsh, man. I think there's a good chance Kevin Warsh is going to take a radically different approach to Fed policy. He's going to be looking at the massive debt that we have and the fact we have to refinance that debt. Powell says, I don't make decisions based on that. Well, Kevin Warsh is a little smarter than Powell, and he's looking at everything. Because it's not just inflation and employment. It's also how much debt we have to pay and how much we're spending every month to finance that debt and pay that debt down, which at these interest rates is incredibly, incredibly high. Like 10% of the budget or something is going to paying this debt. So we got to get that under control. It affects this current cohort of people in America, and it also affects the future. So anyway, I think Kevin Warsh is going to take a radically different approach. They've already been talking about the Fed Treasury Accord, which would be Scott Bessent and Kevin Warsh working together and doing all these crazy things, I don't know, financial jiggering and voodoo to basically cut rates to near zero and refinance everything and usher in an incredible bull market, hopefully not to be followed by massive inflation. So no one's pricing that in either.
When it happens, just take advantage of that. When the interest rates go down, make sure to not be like, oh, I'll refinance tomorrow. Refinance then, right then and there, when you have the opportunity. Buy your property, buy whatever, when the rates are low, because they're not going to stay there forever. And make sure to take advantage of the good markets and get your investments. Don't drag your feet, keep waiting, whatever. Because, again, if they do the financial jiggering, it helps out America, helps out the dollar, but it isn't going to be a permanent thing. You're probably going to have a 6-month window to really take advantage on the investment side, but also take advantage in your personal loan side. If you got personal loans, credit card debt, HELOC loans, whatever, take advantage of it, get new loans, pay off expensive debt, refinance the house, whatever it is, because those low loans don't last forever. We saw that in COVID.
That's a great point. And we were talking about before the show, the last bull run, real bull run, 2020, 2021, that was my first bull run in crypto. I think Nick's as well. I mean, because I got into crypto 2017, but I was just an investor. I was still working as a lawyer then. I wasn't in the industry. Then it went full-time 2018. Bear market, bear market, bear market. Finally, there was one bull market. And then it's been 5 years of no alt season to speak of. I know we've had a few winners here and there. But my point is I've lived through basically only one bull run. And the biggest mistake that I made, and probably everyone else too, I mean, if it was their first one, is thinking that it was going to last forever. Or certainly longer than it did. And so, you keep making investments, you're not taking profits, the greed takes over, whatever. and before you know it, you've round tripped half your bags. Fortunately, I did pull enough out where I can live a pretty good life, and I can't really complain. But to Nick's point, the next bull run, remember those lessons from the last bull run. Remember to take profits. Remember to take some money out. Remember to do the right things. The good times do not last forever. So word from the wise. It's funny. You talk to Bitcoin crypto OGs. Apparently, it actually takes 3 cycles for most people to get rich in crypto.
There you go. Well, I think we covered a lot today. It was more news focused versus chart focused because nobody wants to look at red candles on charts. But any last words here before we wrap it up and get to posting some other stuff? Also, stay tuned on the Crypto Paradise thread, Crypto Paradise YouTube, X, whatever, for some short form content that will be posted over the weekend. Also, watch the live show yesterday if you want to learn more about Smart Sentinels. We had them come on towards the end of the live show to kind of talk about their product, their AI project, and the token they will be launching. You have an opportunity to invest in the seed round if you're part of the Surf DAO, and future rounds with the pool's governance committee over there as well. So a lot of good opportunities coming. Will it be timed up perfect with this alt season coming at the end of March? I don't know. Only time will tell.
That'd be nice. That'd be nice. End of March. I don't know. I mean, I do by the way, if that happens, my thesis that this cycle has played out almost identically to 2019 and 2020 will be even further validated. Because if you recall, that was essentially when things started to take off that cycle. All right? We had the end of QT 2019, market downturn actually in the beginning of 2020, big capitulation wick when COVID hit, followed by recovery, followed by parabola, all in March. So if that happens again, I mean, I think without a shadow of a doubt, be mirroring 2020. Do I think that's going to happen? No, there's a chance. There's a chance. It really comes down to the war, doesn't it? Can we get this war over in 10 days? If yes, then maybe we do start going on a crazy run. If no, and by the way, my guess is the market being red right now is just because some development in the war. You can track. I mean, if you're curious about these things, you can get on social media or turn on the news or whatever, and you can hear statements from Trump or whomever, and then you can look at the market and go, "Oh, no wonder why it crashed because Trump did or said something that market didn't like, or maybe the Iranians shot another missile and it landed and it hit an Arab oil factory. God damn, not again." So I haven't looked at the news in about an hour because we've been on the stream, but this is what is moving the markets these days. So I don't know if you're a leverage trader, maybe stay away, but it's very fascinating stuff. Hopefully this war ends 10 days from now. Let's get 10 days from now, and let's see where things are at in the next week. We do have a comment here from a Solana maxi, 62K ETH. Where will Solana be? That's a great question. We have to assume a couple things. Let's assume that 62K ETH is not going to happen this cycle. That's not a reasonable 30x returns in the next 12, 18 months. Doesn't seem reasonable to me. Let's assume 62K ETH in the next 5 years. Then the question becomes, where will Solana be in the next 5 years? That's a harder question. I think it will still be the dominant retail chain. I don't think memes are really going anywhere. I think there is a need for high-speed, super low-cost chain, and that's what Solana is. Also BNB chain. I don't know, man. I think Solana would obviously be at like $5,000 per Solana at that point. Whatever. It would be insanely priced. But we do have to have a few things go correctly. The one thing why I think ETH is guaranteed to get to those levels is because there is enough institutional adoption now and acceptance and stable coins and all that stuff that's less susceptible to retail and kind of the vagaries of which way does retail want to go. Does retail want to do memes, etc. Solana is more dependent on that. So to me, it's a little bit higher risk. But yeah, man, we hold Solana. We're bullish on Solana. Where do you think we get this cycle? $300?
I don't know. Solana's a tough one just because there is more VC backers. Where's the utilization going to come from? And it has higher inflation than Ethereum does as well. But you know, with the assumption, let's say Ethereum goes to $22,000, Solana should do what BNB did and get above that $1,000 mark, and then have some kind of, you know, blow off top. I
That'd
don't
be
think
like 10x.
Solana.
Yeah, I think a 10x.
I don't think Solana outperforms Ethereum though. That's the thing. So it's like if you're saying ETH goes to 22K, that'd be about an 11x for Ethereum, but $1,000 Solana right now would be over an 11x. So that would be the assumption that Ethereum is outperforming Bitcoin and Solana outperforms ETH, and I just don't know if I believe that Solana is going to outperform ETH the remainder of the cycle.
I don't know. I could see a scenario where end of cycle, you get a blow off top. Because think about every alt season. There comes a time when the lower caps outperform the bigger caps, even if it's only for like a month or a few weeks. You get like a crazy blow off top on some of these lower caps. So you could absolutely have Solana for a couple weeks or a month, you know, just absolutely skyrocket to something insane, like $1,500 or $2,000 Solana, while ETH is at 22,000. But let's just see. I mean, there's a lot of ifs there. There's a lot of ifs. I see you got a Solana Maxi. Yes, it is faster and cheaper to use. We know that. We know that to be true. But you kind of have to understand something called network effects, and you have to understand the different directions that ETH and Solana are going in. You're thinking it, by the way, shout out to you for coming on the stream and asking a great question. But you have to think about it from the two different perspectives. You have institutional investors, Wall Street, stablecoin issuers, you know, the big money types. They all prefer Ethereum. Ethereum has had zero downtime, meaning the chain has never gone down. It's far more decentralized, right? Yes, it's slower. Yes, it's more expensive by a couple of cents. But it's not going anywhere. It's established. It's much less risky if you're talking about deploying $5-10 billion worth of an asset, $50 billion worth of stable coins. It's much less risky to be on Ethereum. So that's the target audience for ETH. You're thinking about it from your own standpoint, your own perspective of, well, I'm a degen and I like going to the meme coin trenches and ETH's too expensive for that and therefore Solana's better. It's not quite so simple as that. So by the way, I think Solana will continue to be the most popular, fast, and cheap chain. I don't think it's going to be dethroned from that. But if you're a guy, if you're some Wall Street bank looking to deploy $50 billion on chain, you're not going to choose Solana. You're going to choose Ethereum.
And we got him in here saying the Fire Dancer update coming out soon. That is always good. Updates usually spur some FOMO. But we got Cookie Dev in the house says you need to talk to developers what they think about Solana. Solana will collapse because of the foundations it's built upon, patches upon patches upon patches. I mean, that is very true. The one thing about Solana that makes it a little tough is it's on its own little island as far as developer suite, versus Ethereum has a big battle-tested developer suite. EVM compatibility, some of the biggest chains are EVM compatible, BNB, Pulse Chain, the list goes on, which helps base chain keep kind of that liquidity, that activity on Ethereum network, but also ease of access to Ethereum network. So if you're on BNB or Pulse Chain or Base, you can go back to ETH or vice versa very quickly. It all kind of integrates with each other. And developers of those other chains, layer 1s and layer 2s that are EVM compatible, their work can also be used by the Ethereum Foundation if needed.
I got a question for a non-Cal. By the way, shout out to you for joining the stream, my friend. Hope you give us a follow, subscribe, comment. Everyone should be doing that, by the way. How old are you, my friend? Are you Gen Z? My guess is you're Gen Z. And nothing wrong with Gen Z. Shout out to all the Gen Z followers and viewers, etc. I'm an old man. I'm a millennial. I'm almost 40, by the way. Fucking crazy. In any event, Gen Z loves Solana. Gen Z was onboarded into crypto, at least many of them, through Solana. Like, I don't think they ever even went and got, like, a normal Ethereum wallet. They just went straight to Solana. And so as long as there is that cohort of, I don't know, 50 million, I don't know how many Gen Z users are there in crypto, seem to be a lot of people in the trenches, Solana trenches, at least there were in meme season. I don't know if they ever really want to switch out of Solana. Just like I never really wanted to switch out of EVM, but I had to because Solana became so popular. They're not going to want to switch. So they're going to stay there. Solana's going to continue to be a thing. But I think, again, it's mostly just for retail folks. And that's fine. I mean, we need a chain that's geared towards fast, cheap, retail, good tooling for speculation and whatever. And so that's what Solana is, and that's great. And I think it's going to run to $1,500 or $2,000 in the next 5 or 10 years because of that. Anyway, don't sell sub $100 Solana. That's all I know.
All right. Last thing here, Cookie Dev says Smart Sentinels turned down 4 offers to go mainly on Solana. We're going cross-chain, however, BNB chain is the main one. So there's some devs, a dev aspect about to launch a new product, AI agents, and AI protocols, and they're opting to go for EVM-compatible chains with the BNB chain over the Solana chain for probably dev reasons. So there's the choice. Solana has recently gone down, and although it always comes back up, you got to ask yourself, why is it going down? Can one of the top chains in the world really go down? And that's one of the things I complain about with the modern banking system, the fact that I don't have access to my funds 24/7, 7 days a week. And when a crypto network is going down, the same applies for that. That's kind of what I'm trying to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about BNB chain versus Solana because back in 2021, Solana really wasn't popular. I don't even know if it even existed. But in any event, it wasn't popular, and BNB chain, or at that time BSC chain, was the fast and cheap chain that retail was loving and so on. And then you had Polygon pop up and some other random ones that were popular for a minute. But then Solana kind of overthrew BNB chain. But I don't know, BNB chain seems like it's making a big comeback. There's a number of projects that we're working with. Obviously, Smart Sentinels. You also got another one called Bullshot, which basically launched like a pump fund equivalent on BNB chain. There's still a lot of activities in the BNB chain trenches. And, you know, if you have an understanding of CZ, never sleep on CZ. Never count that guy out. Like, he's got tricks up his sleeve. He'll do something to turn BNB chain around as well. So I wouldn't sleep on them whatsoever. It'll be interesting to see like which ultimately becomes the dominant fast cheap chain for like retail and memes over this next remaining part of the cycle. We'll have to monitor that situation.
Talking about memes, breaking news, Chuck Norris has passed away at the age of 86. An American legend has just died. One of the biggest memes, and I'm sure Chuck Norris memes will be all over your newsfeed today with the news that Chuck Norris has passed away in Hawaii at the age of 86.
He looked pretty good for 86. I mean, I guess he had a lot of work done or something, but I didn't know he was that old. 86. Good for him. He lived a long, pretty good life. Shout out to Chuck Norris. You know, Chuck. I respect Chuck Norris because he was one of those few people that I think used to be a Democrat at one time or another, and then kind of saw the light and was like, these people went insane. I have to switch to the Republicans because they're not insane. It's actually hard to switch political affiliations and to admit that your prior view system was wrong. That's a hard thing to do. I've recently registered as a Republican. Happy to say it. Hopefully going to help flip my state red. Because I don't need a bunch of crazy Democrats raising my taxes and having like a boy compete with my daughter in soccer. Fuck all that. So shout out to everyone who was at one point a dumb young liberal and now got some money and some responsibilities and saw the light and turned Republican. That's what Chuck Norris did too.
There we go. I think let's wrap it up for today. Got some other things to knock out. We thought it was going to be a short show, 15 minutes, and now we're 58 minutes in. As once you get us rambling, and then we got Inno Call in the chat box, Cookie Dev in the chat box, Martin Mexican in the chat box. It keeps the conversation flowing. So as green candles come, guys, make sure to get your questions over on the YouTube or even in the Twitter. That way you guys can form the conversation on a daily basis.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys jumping in. By the way, once the market gets hotter, we'll start doing giveaways. We'll start giving you guys, little airdrops of different coins and monies. And we want to reward you guys. It's just been, obviously the market's been dry and we haven't had the capital to do that. But we will start rewarding you guys. So remember to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. And until Monday, guys, we'll see you on the beach.